Greetings, Mason Storm here. On today's episode we're going to be making some cinnamon bun pizza. It's one heck of a dessert. Stay tuned. I'm going to start out by making some pizza dough. 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 cup of warm water, and 3 cups of flour. Going to be using this decent sized bowl here. Add in the warm water, the yeast, let it do its thing. I got instant, I can move on to the next step. Add in the small ingredients, give them a little bit of a mix. Fabulous. Now we can add in our flour. And once our flour is in, then we can proceed to our kneading process. We want to make sure we knead and mix this all together. Probably about 5 or 10 minutes. It doesn't take very long. Once you get the dough kind of holding together, and if it's a little bit dry, just kind of wet your hands. If it's the opposite, where it's a little bit wet, just sprinkle a little bit of flour in there. Once it's done though. And then we're going to put this in a nice warm place, so I'm going to stick it in the oven with the light bulb on, which I had really good luck with. We're just going to leave it there for about an hour or so till it doubles in size. Now we can make our topping. So I've got 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 1/2 cup of butter. I melted it probably a little bit too much. And now we're simply going to get a small bowl out and proceed to combine the 3 ingredients and mix it till we have ourselves a nice cinnamon, buttery, sugary slurry. A fabulous combination if you ask me. Butter and sugar, what can go wrong? We have that all sorted out. It's time to work on the pizza proper. So I got my dough here and I'm just going to divide it in 2. That way you got 2 pizzas 10-inch in size approximately. You could have your main course and your dessert pizza. Of course I'm just making the dessert one now. Or you could make 2 dessert ones, that would also be fine. Or any combination of whatever you think, because you're the one doing whatever you're doing. So we're just going to stretch this out. Now, as far as stretching pizzas go, I really like the press stretch method. You kind of just press it into the table, get it nice and flat, and stretch it to the point you want. You can get all fancy doing the throwing it in the air and the whatever, but that doesn't necessarily help you in this application unless you're like really good at it. A lot of those techniques result in overly thin pizzas in the center unless you do them right. The knuckle stretch, you do that kind of near the edges or whatever, that kind of works a little bit better. From my days working in a pizza shop, that was something I learned. And once we got our little pan down here, a little bit of flour on top. If you don't have a pizza pan, that's fine. You could do this on a conventional pan. Throw down a little bit of flour below or a little bit of oil, that way it doesn't stick. With this type of pan here, you wouldn't want to use oil because that would be, well, it'd just be oil over a flame. That would just not be good. Or do it in like a cast iron, that might be pretty awesome too. Just kind of want to get it kind of round and fill in the pan kind of the way you want it. And we don't want any holes in it because our mixture is so liquidy and runny that it will just pour right through. So it's important that you have the proper amount of thickness on your dough. And once it's all nice and round, we can simply dump our stuff on top. And then kind of spread it around and make sure we have nice even coverage so that the sugar is all over the place, because the sugar and the butter, they kind of separate a little bit. So doing that kind of helps. If you don't like your sugary mixture like this, add a little bit of oats to it and that can kind of thicken it up a little bit so it's not as liquidy. But when we bake this, it's going to dry out quite a bit. Some of it gets absorbed into the bread and some of it just kind of cooks down. So all is good. And once we have our nice coverage done, we're going to throw it in the oven, cook it at 450 degrees, 10-15 minutes to get a little bit of color on the crust and it's starting to cook. You can cook it longer if you want. Not having made this in an actual pizza oven, I don't know what it's like if you cook it at 700 degrees. I would be quite interested to find out, because that might give you a little bit more caramelization. Okay, time for our fancy icing to go on top. I've got a teaspoon of vanilla here. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of cream cheese, and I got 1/3 cup of icing sugar. And what we're gonna do here is just kind of warm up the cream cheese in the microwave, and then just mix everything together and stir vigorously until it all combines into a lovely icing. And once we have our icing good and combined, we need a way of applying it to our pizza. In order to do that, I'm going to be using the old bag method. So I have a small Ziploc bag here, and I proceed to attempt to transpose the icing into the bag, which for whatever reason I struggled way more than I probably should have. Probably should have used a bigger bag, but yeah, this was fun. Once we have it all moved into the bag, now it's simply a matter of removing all the air from it. So I like to kind of just shuffle it all down to the bottom, open and close the Ziploc, letting out the air as you go, and it usually works out somewhat okay. Perfect. And here's our finished pizza. Now I could probably bake it a little bit longer, get a little bit more color on the crust, but it was kind of fine the way it was. So I'm just going to prick the end of the bag here, and then I can apply the icing. This is really what makes this cinnamon bun pizza come to life. And just kind of do a nice covering and spread it all over, and then eat it. You might want to wait for it to cool off a bit because it's got like molten sugar on the top right now, but you don't want it to be like cold, but you don't want it to be like burn your roof of your mouth with scalding hot sugar. So there's kind of a bit of a fine line there. Anyway, that's the end of this one. So let me know in the comments below if you ever make your own cinnamon bun pizza and what your thoughts are on it. If you like my stuff, please like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.